All right, so today we're tackling this question that I think's been on a lot of people's minds. Why is Ukraine so important to Putin? And what can we learn from Ukraine's struggle about, the future of democracy? To help us with that, we are diving deep into the insights of Chrystia Freeland. And she's not just like some random commentator.
Yeah.
She's Ukrainian, Canadian family in both countries.
Yeah.
Speaks both languages.
It's just skin in the game.
Yeah. And even covered the Chechnya War back in the 90s.
Yeah, so she's seen it.
So she's seen firsthand
The brutality.
that Russia is capable of.
Exactly. And I think, that's what makes her perspective so valuable here. She shares this right off the bat, and it kind of grabs you. In 2014, she was banned from Russia.
Really?
Like officially blacklisted by the Kremlin.
Persona non grata.
Yeah.
And that was just for criticizing Putin.
Yeah, just for criticizing Putin.
And voicing support for an independent Ukraine.
Yeah.
Talk about a bold way to kick things off. Yeah, it definitely sets the stage for this kind of deep dive into this complex relationship between Russia and Ukraine. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is how she dismantles this oversimplified idea that language equals loyalty in Ukraine. Like if you speak Russian, you must be pro-Russian.
Right. It's like a litmus test.
Yeah.
I think it's not true.
Freeland tells a story about her own family
Okay.
that completely challenges that. They spoke Ukrainian, they spoke Russian, and even Polish.
Wow.
Switching back and forth. It was just part of their life.
And I think that's so fascinating because you realize, it shows how fluid those identities were and still are for a lot of Ukrainians. It's not about picking sides. It's about, their lived experience, their heritage.
Exactly. And it makes it even more tragic how Russia has weaponized language to try and erase Ukrainian identity.
Yeah.
You can see it throughout history. Tsar Alexander II banned Ukrainian language from being printed.
Wow.
Stalin's horrific Holodomor famine targeted Ukrainian-speaking regions. These are deep wounds that still resonate today.
It's a really stark reminder that language can be a tool of oppression.
Oh, for sure.
Not just communication.
Absolutely.
And it seems like this fear of Ukrainian identity, this need to control the narrative, it seems like that's pretty central to understanding Putin's obsession.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But to fully grasp that, we need to go back to the fall of the Soviet Union.
Okay.
You see, Putin keeps pushing this big lie.
Right.
That the West orchestrated the whole thing.
Right.
But Freeland debunks that really well.
Yeah, she even brings up George H.W. Bush's Chicken Kiev speech.
Oh, yeah.
Where he was actually trying to hold the USSR together.
Right.
It's almost hard to imagine now.
Yeah, I know the West at the time, they were more concerned with stability than dismantling the Soviet Empire.
Yeah.
But what really drove the Soviet collapse were internal pressures.
Okay.
People yearning for freedom.
Yeah.
Self-determination. Like that 1991 referendum in Ukraine, where the majority voted for independence.
It's easy to forget, looking back, how monumental that moment was.
Yeah.
Both Russia and Ukraine
Oh, yeah.
faced enormous challenges in building these new systems of government
Right.
and transitioning to market economies.
Totally.
And their paths diverged.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Pretty dramatically.
Russia, unfortunately, under Yeltsin, descended into what's called kleptocracy,
Oh.
essentially ruled by thieves.
Okay.
It's a system where those in power enrich themselves at the expense of everyone else.
Yeah.
Ukraine, while struggling with corruption and political instability, did have these moments of genuine democratic progress,
Okay.
like the Orange
Do
Revolution.
you remind us quickly what sparked the Orange Revolution? It feels important to understand that context.
Absolutely. So in 2004, there was this blatantly rigged presidential election
Right.
that was trying to install this pro-Russian leader.
Right.
Ukrainians took to the streets in these massive protests, demanding a fair recount,
Okay.
democratic reform.
Yeah.
It was just this powerful display of people power.
Yeah.
And ultimately forced a new election,
Wow.
which brought in a pro-Western leader.
Okay.
Of course, that victory was short-lived,
Yeah.
but it showed this desire for a different path.
Yeah, so you've got these two very different trajectories, Russia sliding toward authoritarianism
Right.
and kleptocracy, and Ukraine, despite its struggles, fighting for a democratic future.
Absolutely.
It's no wonder that Putin sees Ukraine as such a threat.
And Freeland really brings that point home when she talks about a conversation she had with Mikhail Kasyanov,
Okay.
Putin's former prime minister.
Oh, wow.
It reveals this deep paranoia
Okay.
within the Kremlin.
So what was so revealing about that conversation? Why was Putin so threatened by Ukraine's aspirations?
Essentially, Kazyanov suggests that Putin views a successful democratic Ukraine
Okay.
as an existential threat to his own grip on power in Russia.
Wow.
It would expose the lies of his propaganda,
Yeah.
the corruption of his regime,
Right.
and inspire Russians to demand similar freedoms.
That's a really powerful insight.
It is.
It's not just about territory or historical grievances.
Right.
It's about this fundamental clash
Yeah,
of values and systems.
precisely.
So this brings us to another powerful symbol that Freeland highlights, Mezihiria, the opulent estate of Viktor Yanukovych, the pro-Russian president
Oh,
who was ousted during the Maidan uprising in 2014.
Yeah, the one who sparked the protests by backing out of that trade deal with Europe
Oh, right.
at the last minute.
The golden loaf of bread
That's right.
they found in his mansion.
Oh, yeah. It was all over the news.
Yeah.
Exactly. That golden loaf became this potent symbol
Yeah.
of the corruption that fueled the Maidan protests
Okay.
and continues to plague Ukraine.
Yeah.
It just represented everything that Ukrainians were rising up against.
So we're starting to see how these threads connect. The historical baggage, the weaponization of language, the fear of a democratic Ukraine, and this pervasive corruption that's become intertwined with these power structures. But where does this leave us in understanding what's happening in Ukraine today?
Well, the Maidan uprising, which Freeland was reporting on from the ground, is a crucial turning point.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about a trade deal.
Right.
It was about Ukrainians rejecting this corrupt system
Yeah.
and demanding a European future,
Okay.
one aligned with democratic values
Right.
and the rule of law.
And it's so incredible how Freeland, weaves in these personal stories from the protests, like the one about Yegor Sobolev, this Russian-born activist who actually found his Ukrainian patriotism
Wow.
through the fight for democracy on Maidan.
It challenges those simplistic narratives that try to paint Ukraine as neatly divided
Yeah.
along ethnic or linguistic lines.
Yeah.
I mean, here's someone who defies those easy categorizations,
Right.
as so many Ukrainians do.
You mentioned earlier how Russia weaponized language
Right.
to suppress Ukrainian identity. Did they use similar tactics during the Maidan protests?
Absolutely. Russian state media was churning out this propaganda,
Okay.
portraying the protesters as fascists,
Oh, wow.
and Western puppets just trying to delegitimize their movement.
Yeah.
It was a blatant attempt to manipulate public opinion,
Right.
both in Russia and internationally.
And this disinformation campaign,
No.
it didn't stop with the Maidan protests,
No.
did it? It's something we're seeing play out even more intensely now.
Right. Freeland draws these parallels between the Maidan protests and the annexation of Crimea,
Oh, okay.
which happened just a few months later.
Right.
She argues that Putin saw the success of that Maidan uprising as a direct threat
Yeah.
to his own power,
Okay.
that he just couldn't risk allowing Ukraine to become this beacon of democracy on Russia's border.
So the annexation of Crimea was like a preemptive strike
Yeah.
in a way to prevent Ukraine from fully breaking free
Yeah.
from Russia's sphere of influence.
That's a key takeaway from Freeland's analysis. She argues that Putin's ultimate objective isn't just about, territorial expansion.
Right.
It's about undermining the very idea
Okay.
of a successful democratic Ukraine.
Right.
He needs to maintain this narrative that Ukraine is inherently unstable,
Okay.
corrupt, incapable of governing itself without Russia's guidance.
Because if Ukraine succeeds,
Right.
it would expose the failures of his own system.
Exactly. A thriving democratic Ukraine will be a constant reminder to the Russian people
Right.
of what they're being denied.
Yeah.
Basic freedoms, fair elections, a government that serves its citizens, not just
Right.
a small, corrupt elite.
So how does the current conflict in Ukraine fit into this broader picture?
Well, Freeland sees it as this continuation of Putin's longstanding effort to destabilize Ukraine
Right.
and prevent it from achieving genuine independence.
Okay.
It's about keeping Ukraine weak,
Right.
divided, dependent on Russia.
Yeah.
The invasion, the atrocities, the relentless disinformation campaign. It's all part of this larger strategy.
It's heartbreaking to see the human cost
Oh, yeah.
of this conflict.
Yeah.
The displacement,
Yeah.
the loss of life.
The trauma
Yeah.
inflicted on innocent people.
Absolutely. And Freeland doesn't shy away from the human toll.
No.
She tells the stories of Ukrainians who've lost loved ones who've been forced to flee their homes,
Right.
who are fighting for their very survival.
Absolutely.
But despite all the suffering,
yeah.
there seems to be this incredible resilience among
Yeah.
Ukrainians, this determination to defend their country.
Yes. Their identity, their right to choose their own future.
That's one of the most inspiring aspects of Freeland's account.
I think so.
You know, she highlights the courage, the resourcefulness, the unwavering spirit of the Ukrainian people.
Yeah.
From the volunteers providing aid and support, the soldiers on the front lines, there's this incredible sense of unity and purpose.
That's like they're proving Putin wrong. With every act of defiance, every act of kindness, every step they take toward rebuilding their lives.
You know, it makes me think of something that Freeland noted about the symbolism of those Maidan protests.
Yeah.
She described it as a festival of dignity.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing again today.
Yeah.
Even in the face of unimaginable hardship.
Yeah.
Ukrainians are reaffirming their dignity, their humanity, their right to exist as a free and independent nation.
It's this powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure.
Yeah.
And that the fight for freedom is never truly over.
But the question remains, what does the future hold for Ukraine?
Yeah.
Can it withstand this onslaught?
Right.
Can it emerge from this conflict as a truly democratic and prosperous nation? Yeah, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And I think Freeland grapples with it too.
Yeah.
You know, she doesn't offer these easy answers, but she does give some really insightful perspectives. One thing that really struck me is how much emphasis she puts on the role of the international community.
Yes. Freeland argues that Ukraine's fate isn't just like a regional issue.
Right.
It has global implications.
Right.
The outcome of this conflict is going to have a profound impact on the future of democracy, on the rules-based international order.
Yeah.
Our collective security.
It's like a litmus test.
Oh, yeah.
For the world.
It is.
Are we going to stand by and allow a sovereign nation to be just bullied and brutalized?
Right.
Or are we going to defend, you know, these principles of freedom, self-determination, territorial integrity?
And she's not just talking about military support.
Right.
Although that's certainly crucial.
Yeah, of course.
She also highlights the importance of economic assistance.
Yeah.
Humanitarian aid.
Right.
And continuing to expose the lies and propaganda coming out of the Kremlin.
So it's this multifaceted approach.
Yeah.
We can't just focus on like one thing.
Right.
It has to be this comprehensive effort.
It does.
But even with, you know, strong international support, ultimately it's up to the Ukrainians themselves to determine their future.
And Freeland emphasizes this point.
Yeah.
She argues that the Ukrainian people have shown just incredible resilience, resourcefulness, determination in the face of adversity.
It's amazing.
They're not just fighting for their survival. They're fighting for the kind of country they want to build.
You know, it's interesting because earlier we were talking about how Putin fears a successful democratic Ukraine.
Right.
It seems like in spite of the horrors of this war, Ukrainians are proving him right.
Yeah, they are.
They're demonstrating that even under this immense pressure, they can organize, they can resist.
They can govern themselves.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the power of human agency, even in the face of overwhelming odds.
Yeah.
And it's this reminder that democracy isn't something that's just handed down.
Right.
It has to be fought for, nurtured, defended,
yeah,
sometimes at great cost.
So what can we as individuals learn from Ukraine's struggle? Beyond like staying informed, you know, beyond supporting humanitarian efforts, is there something more we can take away?
I think one of the most important lessons is the value of solidarity.
Okay.
Ukraine's fight is this reminder that we're not just isolated individuals, but part of this larger community, this global web of interconnectedness.
Yeah, and when one part of that web is threatened, the whole system is at risk.
Exactly.
So it's about recognizing that our fates are intertwined, that we have this responsibility to speak out against injustice, to support those who are fighting for their freedom, to defend the principles that underpin, you know, a just and peaceful world.
Exactly. And it starts with understanding the complexities of these issues.
Yeah.
Engaging in thoughtful dialogue, challenging misinformation, holding our own leaders accountable for their actions.
You know, at the beginning of this deep dive, we asked, why is Ukraine so important to Putin? And what does its struggle tell us about the future of democracy? And I think we've begun to answer those questions.
I think so.
But what really stays with me is the resilience of the Ukrainian people.
Yeah.
Their determination to choose their own path, even in the face of just unimaginable hardship, is something we can all learn from.
It's a reminder that hope is not a passive emotion.
Right.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
And that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can prevail.
That's a powerful thought to leave us with.
It is.
And I encourage you to continue exploring this topic, stay engaged, stay informed, and never lose sight of the fact that the fight for freedom and democracy is a fight that we all share.